Hi everyone and welcome to another video from premature.com. In this video we'll be showing some tips for how to use the handbrake properly. It's a simple matter, but nevertheless there are a couple of things to pay attention to. So stay tuned. premature.com. Be sure to visit us at our website premature.com where you can find more useful car and driving tips. Before we start, we must mention that this video shows how to operate the classic handbrake system, not the modern electric one. The working principle for both of them is basically the same, but there are significant differences, mainly how you use it and that the electric one works automatically. But even if you have an electric handbrake on your car, these tips may come in handy. Just a few words on how the handbrake actually works. The handbrake, also known as a parking brake or emergency brake, is part of the car's brake system that stops only the rear wheels. The main purpose of the handbrake is to ensure that the car doesn't accidentally move anywhere when parked. Also, it's a useful emergency system if the main brake system stops working for some reason. The lever of the handbrake is connected through cables to the rear calipers or brake drums, and once you pull it, it engages the caliper or brake cylinder and presses the brake pads or brake shoes against the disc or drum. To simplify, by using the handbrake, you manually engage the rear brakes. The handbrake is engaged when you pull the brake handle. To release it, you push the release button located on the handle. This system is the same on most cars. It varies depending on where the release button is and what is the layout of the handbrake system. The location of the handle varies from car to car. The most common place is between the front seats just after the gear shifter. Another common location is in the footwell near the pedals, like in the Mercedes for instance. It's conveniently engaged with the foot and released manually. The other option is the mentioned electric parking brake, which is engaged and disengaged with the push of a button and automatically. When pulling the handbrake, use medium force. Some drivers engage the handbrake somewhat violently. Know that this can cause damage to the handbrake system. For instance, because of the sudden tension and pressure caused by sudden pulling, the calipers or brake cylinders can get damaged and even start to leak. This goes double if you don't use the handbrake a lot. So when engaging the handbrake, best use medium force, so when pulling you can hear every distinctive click of the mechanism. When releasing the handbrake, always make sure to lower it to the end. The best way to be sure you did this is when you hear the characteristic thump sound when the lever reaches the end guard. Otherwise, if you leave it partially engaged, it can damage the brake system, not to mention heavily increase fuel consumption because you're driving while the brakes are engaged. When the handbrake is pulled, it's under tension. This sometimes causes the release button to get stuck, making it very hard to release the handbrake. If this happens, slightly pull the handbrake and then press the button. As you'll see, it will easily release. In relation with the previous tip, always pay attention to the dashboard warning light. It lights up when the handbrake is engaged, and its main purpose is to warn you that you forgot to lower the handbrake. Make a habit of taking a look at the dash before starting to drive, just in case. If you drive in countries where there's lots of snow and very low temperatures, then you should know this. Because of the temperature difference between the cold temperature outside and the heat caused by the friction of the brakes, a water condensate forms between the brake discs or brake shoes and the drum or disc. When the handbrake is left engaged, the condensate freezes, leaving the brakes seriously jammed to the point that the car can't be moved. In winter conditions, it's best to avoid pulling the handbrake and, if you have to, try doing it after the brakes have cooled off. Lots of drivers, especially in places where there's no hills, don't use the handbrake at all. Putting the car in park or in first gear keeps the car in place. But know that by not using the handbrake, the whole system may get stuck over time and eventually cease to work. So even if you don't tend to use the handbrake often, pull it at least a couple of times every month in order to keep the system functional. The handbrake is also known as the emergency brake. It's called that way since if the standard brake system on the car malfunctions, you can pull the handbrake and stop the car. If you are forced to do this, always keep the release button pressed so the locking mechanism of the handbrake doesn't jam it while you're using it. This way you have total control over emergency braking. If you plan on keeping the car in storage for some time, then don't pull the handbrake. Know that when the handbrake is engaged, it puts strain on the whole system, and besides this, keeps the brake shoes and pads locked onto the brake disc or drum. All of this can later cause serious problems and repairs when you decide to use the car again. So, when putting the car in storage, make sure the handbrake is down. In certain situations, you don't have to pull the handbrake all the way. For instance, if it's winter and you're afraid that the wheels will jam, pull it halfway or 70%. This will give enough friction but will at the same time release more easily. You can also do this if you're parked on a flat surface and don't need much braking force. For the end, one more word of advice. Keep your handbrake in good condition. If not used often, the whole system can deteriorate over time, becoming practically useless. So if you notice a flabby handbrake, you don't sense any resistance when pulling it, and the wheels don't hold, so to say, check it out and fix it as soon as possible. It's a matter of safety. So that's it for this time. We hope the video helps. Please like and subscribe. It's a huge help for what we're doing. Thanks for watching and thanks for your time.